Okay, so before we get started and I get the panel to tell you a little bit more about themselves, I thought it would be useful just to explain what a social enterprise is. Who in the room knows what a social enterprise is? Hands up. Yeah. One or two of you? So a social enterprise basically is a business that has a social purpose. So unlike businesses that primarily trade for profit, a social enterprise will have some kind of social purpose or an environmental purpose. So it's doing something that's good for people or the planet, and that's the only distinction in terms of a social enterprise and a normal business. There is no specific legal structure for social enterprises. They can be any legal structure that you want. So you could be a sole trader and a social enterprise. You can be a limited company and a social enterprise. Although all four of us that are sitting here have all got community interest companies, which is seen as one of the main models for operating social enterprises through. So a lot of people do use that model, but you don't have to. You can use any legal structure you choose. What I'm going to do is just ask the panel to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about themselves. In terms of me, my community interest company is called Make an Impact, and my vision is that all businesses will be social enterprises by 2020. So in 2 years' time, it's a big vision. And I think that actually we're seeing a lot of that happen, a lot of change. Many more businesses are going to convert to social enterprises. People are much more passionate about doing something that makes a difference in the world than just having capitalist views around how they operate businesses. And I do most of my work by helping other social entrepreneurs to grow and sustain their businesses. So Asha, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
So I'm trained as a clinical psychologist with a background in forensic mental health. So before I set up Innovating Minds, I used to work in medium secure units with high profile murderers, sex offenders, those that you've probably seen on TV. Kind of realised probably working at it was a bit too late. There was no scope for progression. So what happens when you set up your own organisation, you've got nowhere to progress to because you're already there at the top. So there's no scope for progression. There's a culture of whoever was first one in gets the next promotion, and I was the last one in. So 2016, I handed in my notice on leap year day and set up Innovating Minds. The aim is to provide accessible psychological support. So currently children have to be suicidal to be able to access a psychologist. So we work in schools and we work in the community as well with adults with mental health difficulties to help them stay in employment. So do you want to talk a bit about the initial startup or not?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah.
So I started off with I self-invested £7,500. Within 2 years of trading, we've secured over £500,000 worth of contracts. And we've grown to a team of 13. So you can see how much you can grow and shape it how you want. The benefit I find is you can pick and choose what you want to do. So we have partnerships with organisations in Australia to co-produce videos. We're working up and down the country, and we've been to Bangladesh as well. So it is a good experience. It's not just all the kind of in the mill doing the work. You can pick and choose.
Thank you. Janet?
I'll try and follow that one. Okay, so I've got about 30 years worth of textiles experience. I started sewing when I was about 15. I'd got my degree. I'd been a designer. Sorry, I don't know if it's working. I was a designer for quite a number of years, and I actually got sick of sewing for other people. People wanted the bespoke work, they wanted it, nothing that anybody else has got, and it's very time consuming. And then I found it was a case of, they wanted it for next to nothing, but it could something that could take me a whole week to do the pattern and about an hour to do the sewing. But nobody really wanted to pay for it, so I had to change the direction, went into admin, and I just felt that that wasn't the direction for me because I'm a creative person. So I changed direction, went into teaching. So I've been teaching textiles for about 8 years now in secondary schools. But then I found every year the changes, it was just draining, and I felt like it was sucking the creativity out of me, the subject, and the students that I was actually working with. And it got to the point I wasn't actually spending any time with my family. You know, I had a small child, there's another one that was in secondary school, and I thought, this is not for me. And then I handed in my notice with no job to go to. Quite frightening when you've got a mortgage and kids to look after. And I was always talking that I wanted to set up another business, and it had to be something that was quite creative. And originally I wanted to set up an alternative provision for young people that aren't engaging in education. And just because they're not academic doesn't mean that they can't do it, just means that they work in a completely different way. So I wanted it to be a platform for fashion, textiles, photography, media, graphics, all those different kinds of things. But then I was kind of advised against it. And then one day, my son, who was 17 at the time, him and his friend asked me, can you help us to make a pair of trousers? So I helped them to draft a pattern, quite simply, took them a couple of days, and they made themselves a pair of trousers that cost roughly about £8. And that was just showing them the easy way of doing it without having to go to college to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to get a qualification in there. You just want something that to help you to save money. And then all these light bulbs started going off. And I kept on talking about, I want to do this, I want to do this. And my son says to me, you need to stop talking about it and write it down. So on the 1st of January 2016, I wrote down my idea, and that's where Feed My Creative was born. At the time, I was talking to the YMCA about doing some potentially workshops with them as well. And I saw a post about who you can actually get fabric from. I was going to do a project runway project at school. We didn't have no fabric, so I approached IKEA and said, have you got anything? Chair covers, plastic, I don't care what you've got, just give it to me and we'll work with it. And they said, are you coming in a car or a van? Yeah, that's what I said. So I went in my little car, me and my son, took black bags from school because they were deeper and they were thicker, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And when we went, they gave us 10 black bags full. And it had bedding, curtains, flannels, dressing gowns, you name it, it was in there, worth textiles. And it changed the whole dynamics of how I wanted Feed My Creative to work. And because I was doing the workshops with the YMCA, after I did the workshop, I said to some of the residents, do you need anything? And some of them said, I need a rug. I had a rug in my boot. I had some bedding, and they came to the car. I felt like a dodgy salesman at the time, but I lifted the boot and they went in and they took so much things. And I thought, this is something that's going to work, because I didn't want it to be just about the sewing, because not everybody can sew, not everybody wants to sew. It's a skill to have, that if you damage your clothes or if there's a hole in your jacket, that you can fix it rather than giving somebody else the money. If you're going to pay somebody else £15 to take up a pair of jeans, then that's money that could go towards food shopping for the week. So it was all about saving you some money. So because I had all these items, filling up my house, filling up my mum's house, my son's bedroom, it was everywhere. I had to get a storage unit. And in the meantime, I was still doing workshops for community groups, charities, individuals. I'd got some startup funding from School of Social Entrepreneurs, and that's how I'd met Asha. We were both on the same programme, and that gave us, how much did we get? Was it £4,000? So that helped to do the website, get leaflets, get some more sewing machines, and to be able to just trial it to see, is this actually going to work? And it's been going really great. I've now got a studio in the Jewellery Quarter. I've had that a year. I do workshops from there. I support young people as well with their creative journeys. So at the moment, somebody else is in there sharing the office space that my son's got, because he's now actually going to set up his own clothing brand with plans to move abroad next year to launch it. Yeah, so there's somebody else, she's an artist and she works on her music, so she's got that space, and I don't charge her for it. So I'm looking to get some funding to be able to support her. I'm still getting support from IKEA. So I've been able to donate to homeless charities, refugees, women that have escaped from domestic violence. I've supported pregnant homeless women as well. So if there's a need, as long as you ask me, if I've got it, it's yours to take. And since I've been weighing all the fabric that I've been getting, so far this year it's been just over 1,100 kilos of textiles, and it's still coming in. They've said to me, as long as we've got textiles, we'll always support you. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. Yeah. Okay.
I'm Birgit, and I've been running Change Kitchen for nearly 9 years now. We're, as I said, a catering company that supports people back to work, people with terrible term, multiple labour market barriers, so people with homelessness background, addiction background, maybe even people straight from prison, and we basically get them back to re-engaging with wanting to work, with feeling valued enough to be able to contribute to a team. And then either they get employment from us or we give them references so they can move on to other organisations. And I think so one of the things that I had as a really important thing from the very beginning is that we actually trying to have a good quality product so that people want to buy from us for the food rather than for the social mission, or that the social mission is an add-on, but because no one comes back regularly just if the food wasn't good, sort of thing. So we do anything from this sort of event to quite posh weddings and big launches for big corporates and things like that. And partly why I did that, why that's so important to me was because I felt that was part of helping people get their pride back. Because if they're part of some quite amazing event and people give them nice feedback, then that in itself makes them feel better, rather than just anything that they've done. They've done something really good and they've contributed to an interesting event, and that is actually the feedback that we get from some of the people we've worked with, who maybe at the time of starting, had been really disengaged or really felt disconnected from society altogether through all sorts of reasons. And the fact that they would have helped put an event together and then maybe helped serve it and helped set it up and then stayed for people to give us feedback has really helped them grow, and that's the really sort of the thing that sort of really keeps me going, even though it's definitely not been an easy journey. There's another side to the business which I haven't been doing so much for a while, but I'm just about to start again on Monday, which is that I've actually always delivered healthy eating trainings for anyone really, but nearly always, most of them were for people again who felt disengaged, who felt they were disconnected in sorts of ways, and having the sort of healthy eating training as a way of not just helping people maybe make better choices about their lifestyle, but actually also as a way of getting people together around one table. So nearly all the sessions are about cooking together and then eating together and sort of celebrating that whole thing of being around one table, which sadly quite often once you sort of disconnect altogether, or something happens in your life that makes you disconnect, is something that sort of goes very early on. The sort of eating together and having it back in your life can be something that in itself is a healing thing. And I've worked with women's refuges, for example, where the women and their children were living after having escaped violent situations, and then they'd stop cooking for themselves just because everything was so hard. But then when we started doing it, the whole group would actually start cooking together and cooking for each other, and that was a really positive experience. I think that's it for now. Any other?
Wow, I'm super impressed with all of what's happened so far in terms of your 3 social enterprises. Just for the guys in the room, not all social enterprises are run by women. Although this panel is all women, a lot of social enterprises are run by women. It's actually around 49% of social enterprises, so it's roughly half. So there's a lot more social enterprises run by women than there are normal businesses in the UK. So it's one of the areas where women do tend to have equality in terms of business startup. One of the things that you've kind of touched on a little bit in your answers, but I just want to delve a little bit deeper, is what was your main motivation for starting your social enterprise? And who would like to answer first?
I'm happy to do it. So business in itself was something that was attractive in principle because I'm not a very good employee. Let's put it that way. I'm better at working for myself. But the thing that I never thought I would do it, is that I didn't like the idea of just working for profit. That just wasn't particularly appealing. And when I found out about social enterprise, everything fell into place because I realized I really liked the idea of working for myself, but I wanted to give something back. I never wanted a job that was just about earning money. And so that was the sort of motivation. I thought that's the perfect way of earning my money, I suppose. And the reason why I set it up specifically as it is because I've always worked with, actually in some ways always worked with, in the widest sense, people who are in some ways disconnected, disengaged, and felt I was quite good at getting people to be inspired again and want to be part of something. So it made sense putting that as one of the main things into my social enterprise.
For me, from a young age, I'd been involved in business. My family have businesses. They have retail, manufacture products, they have property. So from the age of 12, I've managed a group of 20 staff that are probably 3 times the age of me. So I've been around business and seen how it's grown from nothing to quite a multi-million-pound kind of organisation. But I've also seen what money does and the shrewd nature of it, and how you become quite paranoid about people around you and kind of thinking they're only here and around you because they want something. So it's really important for me that I enjoyed business, I did like it, but it was important that I had a legal structure in place that put an asset lock in place. So we are a social enterprise limited by shares, which means that we can only take 35% dividends out of that, which means if we want more money, we have to work 3 times as hard, which I don't think is a bad thing. But also it made sure that we always gave back and was doing for social good. The other thing is having a social enterprise, the people around you are actually nice people, they're genuine, they want to help. So you don't have to worry about kind of that shrewd business nature that's out there in kind of corporate and other industries.
Thank you. For me, because I was teaching as well, I wanted to teach on my terms. Education is so difficult that they tell you this is what you're supposed to do and they're supposed to have these outcomes by this amount of time. And when you've got a group of students, you've got 20 in a group, and you've got behavioural issues with some work better than others, some are quite independent and can just get on with it. Sometimes I'd find that I couldn't get around everybody in the space. It's an hour lesson, but 45 minutes, I couldn't get around everyone. So I wanted people to feel relaxed, that there's no pressure, that I can work the way that I want to, teach people the way that I want to, and that they feel comfortable. There's music playing in the background. You can come and go as you please. And if it takes you 4 hours, then it takes you 4 hours. And that's what was important for me, to be able to set up something that people don't feel pressurised that they have to come in and I've got to make something within 2.5 hours or within an hour. And if I don't finish it, then what's going to happen then? If it doesn't get finished, it doesn't get finished. We'll have another session. I don't want to do workshops where the group sizes are large as well. So I would never really have more than 6 at a time. I've done one-to-ones, and it's about socialising and talking to people. Because sometimes you could be in a classroom, you don't actually like the person that's next to you, but you haven't really even got to know them. But working with adults, I felt that it was a way of getting people together so they can socialise. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong, but you can meet a new friend as well. But the whole point is having something that was a home from home, that I don't assume that you've got a space at home that you can work. Some people have quite a chaotic household. You might have to share a room with a younger sibling or an older sibling that's taken up all the space. So this is about you coming, and this is about you, not about anybody else, it's about you. So it was important to create a platform for you to be creative. It's not just about the sewing at all, but for you to be creative in whichever way that was comfortable for you. And that's how I come up with what I did.
Thank you. So, interestingly, much like me, I'm a terrible employee. I've never got on with any of my bosses, and it seems that none of you really enjoyed any of your jobs that you had, and perhaps we all have too many ideas as entrepreneurs. And so the next question is really, what do you think the qualities of a great social entrepreneur are, other than the fact that they can't work for anybody?
I think somebody who gets the social aspect, but just as important, the business side of it, because social enterprise, you have to have the enterprise, there has to be a business behind it. Because if you do everything for free and do everything for good, you can't live. So a good social entrepreneur manages the both, and it's always difficult that you're trying to manage the social against money or kind of even profits to reinvest back into your social mission.
Yeah, even adding onto that, you're always good at what you can do, what your craft is, whatever that be, whether it's finances or creative. I'm good at doing the delivery. I wouldn't say I was great at the business side of it, but the one thing that is important, especially being a social enterprise, is that you actually care as well. You have to care about what you do. There has to be that passion there. If the passion's not there, it's not going to come across, because people actually believe in you as a person, not just what it is that you're delivering. I could deliver anything, but if you don't believe in me, I don't think it's necessarily going to work. But you have to be able to care about your product, your service, and the people that you actually work with.
I agree with both of those things. I would add to it, and I'm sure Heidi will partly laugh. I think it's also really important that you're able to make networks and connections and partnerships. And why Heidi's probably at least grinning, because we've had a chat about it earlier.
I'm going to ask about that in a minute.
Okay, I'll wait for you in a minute. Okay. So yeah, I think partnerships and sort of connecting to the community of other social enterprises does really help, and I think it's also really important, and those things.
Okay, so you just touched there around networks, partnerships. For those of you that don't know, Birmingham has recently become a social enterprise city. Digbeth is also a social enterprise quarter, and Birmingham, I believe, has the highest concentration of social enterprises in the country, most of which are within deprived wards within Birmingham. So Birmingham really is a hotspot for social enterprise activity. You've got a luxury of being based in this area, because there are a lot of networks and different things going on all the time for social entrepreneurs. So my next question is, which networks would you recommend that people get involved with?
I have to admit, I've only just started networking. I hate small talk. Imagine going to an event and having to speak to random people, and you're kind of just tired at the end of the day. So 2 years on, I've kind of forced myself to do more networking, and actually within a week it's paid off. We've ended up with partnerships. So I'd say go to events, even awards, if you're not even shortlisted, because the people that are there are really influential. And speak to those people that are stood actually on their own and in suits, because actually they're quite high up and they don't want to be there either, but they've been sent there from their organisation to go and represent a sponsorship. So also we've just started Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, so I'm yet to find out what that is like. But also social enterprises, so School of Social Entrepreneurs and Unlimited is a good source of networking.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Networking is hard, and you haven't always got somebody that you can actually go with as well. And the worst thing is you walk into a room with as many people as there are in here, and everybody's in their little circles, they're talking, and you walk in, it's like, okay, let me go and have a drink first. And sometimes you just have to join in a conversation, and that's how it works. And it is quite difficult. It can feel quite intimidating as well, but as Asha said, if you see somebody standing on their own in a suit, go and talk to them, introduce yourself. The one thing that I found as well is not even necessarily always giving out business cards as well, but always have a business card or a leaflet on you, because you want somebody to remember you after you've had that conversation. They may not necessarily be able to help you directly, but they may know somebody else that can. So I've always got leaflets with me, and I'll talk to people. But as I say, if there's events that you can go to, free ones are always great as well. So just have a look on Eventbrite as well, see if there's anything. Twitter is really good for showing up different events that are coming up as well.
I really value ISE, which is Institute for Social Entrepreneurs, as one network, as an organisation that actually creates networks, is a better way of putting it. Plus they deliver quite a lot of training for social entrepreneurs, and they'll help with business planning and things like this, so definitely worth connecting to. And once you're sort of connected to them, they will keep you in touch with other stuff going on. I also recommend becoming a member of Social Enterprise UK, which is now free for new social enterprises. They've managed to not charge for it anymore, because they used to be £75, but now under a certain income you can be a free member. They're again good at connecting you to other stuff that's going on in the sector, and sort of maybe even business opportunities, stuff like that. And I probably would even recommend BVSC, Birmingham Volunteers.
Voluntary sector.
Volunteers, okay. Whatever I called it. They're also very good at having lots of information out, and they also offer free networking at times. So they're all three very good. I love networking in my own sector. I feel always, because being a social entrepreneur can be quite lonely, and I feel like coming home when I go there and see some of my mates that I've been doing this journey for a while with. So the other day there was the launch of the Birmingham as a social enterprise city, and I was one of the people there representing the sector, because I've been sort of as part of that early journey, and it was just so lovely seeing some of the people that I've been doing this for so long with. So yeah, I think it can be hard, but I think some of it is also just really good. Oh God, there's people who get me, and they're on the same sort of journey, and so yeah.
One of the other places to network, which is really good, is social media. I'm assuming you're all on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or Facebook's not in trend anymore, is it? But there are lots of social enterprise groups within Facebook, as well as connecting and tweeting out to people that you're interested in connecting with. So if there's somebody within your particular sector or area that you're interested in working, tweet them and say, can I speak to you? Can I talk to you about this? Janet, you've recently tweeted someone not too long ago and got something out of it, didn't you?
Yeah. I can never pronounce his surname. In August, Theo Pafitis.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he does Small Business Sundays, and as a social entrepreneur, it's quite hard to be noticed by the big people, and he has a competition every Sunday, and you have to tweet why you think your business stands out above the rest. And I've known people that have been trying for 5 years, and they're still tweeting, still trying to get through. 6 months it took me, and I think what I did, I put some figures out there, and what he does, you do that on a Sunday between 3 and 5 or something like that. And then the next day he retweets, he picks 5 and retweets them, and then you get follows. And then he has a big event the following year as well. So I'm happy to say I'm a Small Business Sunday winner. So I can put that hashtag on everything. And because he's somebody that's been on Dragon's Den, to be noticed by somebody like him was, I can't lie, I actually cried. I cried my eyes out, because I thought it came at a point where I doubted myself, and even as an entrepreneur, as a business, you do doubt yourself. Am I doing it right? What am I doing half the time? Sometimes I feel like I'm winging it half the time. For somebody as famous and as big as him to notice you, that for me was a really big achievement. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Janet. The other area then, following on from networks, is around partnership working. You've all touched on partnerships that you've got, and I'd just like to ask you really how important they are and how you've managed those partnerships so that they actually work successfully, because a lot of people that I speak to find partnerships really, really difficult. So it would be interesting to hear your perspectives around partnership working.
Yeah. We have 2 large partnerships that we're involved in across Coventry, Warwickshire and Tamworth. One of the first things is, do you like them? That person that you're with, can you get along with them? Could you have a conversation with them? Do you trust them? So it's your gut feeling a lot of the time. And then whilst you're in the partnership, it's managing the expectations. So we find contracting right from the get-go in terms of what we're going to deliver, even discussing the costings, what's the outcomes that you expect, how many meetings and all that kind of thing, really getting that into detail. So when you know what you're signing up to do, to maintain those contracts is about some flexibility as well, and supporting other partners within that organisation, because what we found is if you nurture them, it leads on to other contracts that come your way. The other thing that I found is don't be a pushover in the contracts. It's easier for the person who is holding that big contract to dictate to you, but actually you're just an important part in that. So we've been really firm in terms of what we're willing to negotiate with and things that we're not willing to compromise on. I think as a result that's kind of got me a reputation of being quite scary. So if my admin says, oh, I'll ask Asha about it, they'll prefer not to do that because they'll get one of the emails, that kind of thing. But I think it's important that people know what you're willing to compromise on, and one of the things that we don't do is compromise on service quality and delivery, because that's why we do what we do.
Mine is, it's almost the opposite of that, because I do class Kehrer as one of my partners because of the sheer volume of what I've had from them in the past couple of years. It was difficult for me to be able to put a monetary value on everything. I've kept all the tags and I've looked at it roughly every year, how much have I had from them, and it's been amazing because they've saved me a lot of money in just even buying resources in terms of fabric, because the fabric is of good quality. I was thinking about it a couple of days ago and I'm thinking it's probably roughly around £100,000 worth now, because when you look at the tags, some things could be £20 here, 50, £100, it all adds up, and if you're looking at the sheer bulk of what you have, that's quite a lot. So I maintain a relationship with them because the contacts that I have there, I have them on WhatsApp. They will send me a message sometimes 7 o'clock in the morning. Janet, we've got some textiles for you, or we've got a couple of trolleys for you, when can you come? And they'll have put it aside for me, and I can get it in a couple of days, or sometimes I've got a few hours that I have to collect it from them. But what I always do is keep them updated. So if I've made something from a settee cover, or I've made something from a roller blind, I will send them a photograph. If I've supported a specific, another social enterprise, like one called Homeless Rooms, they're one of the charities that I support the most. I will tell them this is how much I've donated to them, this is how much young people have benefited from it. So as long as I keep them updated, they can tell their managers what I've been getting from them. So as long as I maintain that kind of relationship, they've always said, you know, as long as, you know, it's supporting other people, we will continue to support you. The next phase from that is about me working within the store, so I can actually deliver workshops with them. So it's important to maintain great relationships with whoever you're working with, whether or not it's a partnership or it's your, like with me, I'm somebody I'm donating to, because they're the ones that will speak about you, they're the ones that recommend you. Because the one thing that I haven't really had to do so far is actually advertise. I can do donations. People will usually email me or come to me and say, well, we've heard about you from this person or that person. So it is really important to maintain really healthy and good relationships with partners.
I agree with you about the contract, although I'm not that good at heeding that, and I think I've paid the price for that at times. So I totally agree with you, and I please do and don't do what I did. But it isn't always that easy, but I think it is important. It's a complicated, sometimes a complicated situation, but yeah, I think it is important to stand your ground. I've had some, I've all this time had some really good partnerships, you know, I consider you a partner. You know, Heidi's supported over lots of stuff over the years with lots of great advice. There's lots of people in that sort of world of social enterprise. IC is definitely a partner. We've just started a new partnership with Evolve. They're a social enterprise that also does sort of catering in the widest sense and supports young people back to work, so similar to us but with young people. And we're just started to be able to use their space in the evening when they don't need it for pop-ups. And then I'm going to do healthy eating training for some of the young people, so it's going to be a win-win hopefully, so if both sides get something from it. So for me, that's probably one of the things that I find really important, that the relationship is never one-sided, that I don't like. I would never want to not give back. It's really important for me to feel like, you know, there's something the other person gains from working with me as well. I also don't like it if I feel someone's just taking, so I think that's a really important thing, and I think that balance is you just has to be struck, and the relationships that are the most longest lasting are the ones where that can work, in my opinion. That's probably a good ending.
Thank you. One of the other things I'd just add in there around networking and partnerships is make the most of the opportunities when you are in the room with people that know other social entrepreneurs. So for all of you sitting here in the room, if you've got questions or you want to know somebody that does something within the social enterprise world, please do ask one of the four of us, because we may well know somebody that we can connect you with. And within the social enterprise world, that's something that's very, very common. People are quite happy to connect you and link you up with people that they know and make sure that you get in touch with the right people so that you get the help and support that you need. I'd say that's something that happens a lot. In fact, I think I spend probably about 30% of my time just referring people to lists of names of people that can potentially help them. One of the things that always struck me when I first started out my social enterprise was many, many years ago, there weren't that many people in the social enterprise world. It was still relatively new. And I've kind of, through that, the early stages, felt quite isolated and alone. And it's only over perhaps the last 8 or 9 years that I felt that there's a lot of social entrepreneurs, and I have particular people that I look up to as my role models in terms of who I aspire to be like. One of which was Penny Newman, who worked for Cafe Direct, which was a fair trade coffee company. She also worked for Body Shop, and she also ran Jamie Oliver's foundation. So she was, for me, was somebody that had worked with 3 huge, amazing companies that were all social enterprises and had done really amazing stuff with all of them. So my next question, in terms of who your role models are, do you have any role models within the social enterprise world? And if so, who? Don't just say yes.
I think my role models aren't in the social enterprise world. It's my own family and where they've come from and the difficulties that I've been through, that I just want to get to a place that I've got in my head. So there's nobody else that I'm trying to follow. I'm actually creating my own thing.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I don't think I have got a role model, but there's people that I follow quite hard in terms of what they do as well. One person in particular who I've met him a couple of times is Jay Blades. I don't know if you're all aware of the show on BBC Two, where they go to the tip. They will take something off somebody and remake it into something completely new. And I met him a couple of times, and I can't, like the first time, I seem to cry a lot. The first time I met him, he actually made me cry because he asked some very tough and hard questions about where did I actually want to go with this. And you know, he says at your age, you should know where you want to be in 5 years' time. And it made me think. The one thing that I do quite a lot, and I know we all do it, we all have that negative speak, where if you've done something wrong, you'll say, you know, I'm stupid, or I'm this and I'm that. And the first thing that I did when I walked through his workshop doors would say, oh, you know, I've had a bad morning and I got stuck in traffic. And this man literally had a go at me, and he says, you need to stop being so negative and putting yourself down over the things that are just, sometimes it's just human nature. There's certain things that you just can't help happen. It happens, move on from it. So he's one person that I always think about when I'm literally a bit down, or I'm not thinking about things in a positive way. That's just one of few. I haven't actually got a role model in particular, but he's one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call anyone a role model. I don't know, I'm not sure I like that term either, but I mean, Heidi, you're definitely someone who I always, you know, learn something from. I'm not to say this is the same panel with you. You know that I come to you when I've got questions. Sarah Crawley from ISE is definitely also a person who she leads ISE, who I go to when I've got questions, and you know, she's a good, she's done it much longer, so she's definitely someone I feel I can learn something with. I get, every time I see him, and this is a bit of a joke as well, still get inspired by Peter Holbrook, who's the head of Social Enterprise UK. He's just seems to have limitless, it's getting a bit less, but he seems to have limitless energy for this sector, so he's done a lot for the sector. So I find him quite inspiring. And the people you've mentioned, yeah, definitely all. I also just met, I don't know if she's a social entrepreneur, but I met the new CEO of Shelter the other day. I then realised afterwards she's been writing in The Guardian quite a lot, and I found her amazingly inspiring, and she's had a really good new vision for Shelter as a charity. So look her up. She's definitely someone we need to all be watching.
Thank you. In terms of actually running your social enterprises, what's been your biggest success and your biggest challenge?
If I go for the challenges first, my biggest challenge is money and the lack of. I mean, I've been okay so far in terms of literally floating. I had the SSE money last year. I was successful in getting unlimited funding this year as well to be able to trial what I class as my phase 2. And it's now that I've actually got a premises. It wasn't so bad when I had the storage unit. It was quite affordable to a point. And because I'm quite mobile as well, if somebody wants a workshop, I'll pack everything up in the car and I'll drive to them. I've got a workshop coming up in a couple of weeks in Tamworth. I've got to go to Nottingham at some point as well. But having premises has been quite difficult because you've got to make sure you've got enough money coming in that's going to cover those overheads. So it's not just the rent, it's the electricity, it's the broadband, and it's even keeping the place heated. In the Jewellery Quarter, it's like an icebox right now, and I have to evaluate, is it worth doing workshops between November and February because it is so cold? I will have so many heaters in there, but is it enough to keep the chill off the place? So I've got to think about, how am I going to raise money for the next 3 or 4 months now so I can cover the rent. So even if I'm not using there, at least I know nobody's going to be chasing me for that. So that is the biggest stress of my life at the moment. Successes. When I was part of the launch for Birmingham as an enterprise city as well, so that was really good, and it made me do my social mission. So I had to look at my figures, and to actually look at how well I've done this year, that I work part-time, I've got my family, and I've got the business. I literally work 7 days a week. Even if I'm in my bed, I'm still thinking. I've always got a notebook right by me, so I'm always thinking, writing. So even if it's not the physical, I'm still doing something. So to look at those figures, to know how much fabric I've had, how much I've donated, how many workshops I've done, how many families I've supported, how many individuals I've supported as well, just in 12 months, for me has been, it's been an eye-opener. And it just goes to show, no matter how much I've doubted myself and think, you know, what am I doing? I've actually done really well. I won an award this year as well. I was shortlisted for the NatWest Entrepreneur of the Year Award last year for creative industries. This year I won New Business of Colour, and it's quite an achievement because it means that somebody out there actually believes in you. For somebody to actually nominate you and for you to win something, somebody actually believes in what you do. So that for me is it's an amazing thing.
I guess one of the most challenging things for me has been my mindset. So you might have heard of imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is when you think you're kind of somebody's going to find you out basically that you've just been blagging it all this time, or you're not really good at what you're doing, or you're kind of going to get it found out. So there's a lot of self-doubt. So I've been working really hard on that because that imposter syndrome just pops up at the most inconvenient times. So you always think you're on the back foot towards everybody else. So I'm on the NatWest Accelerator programme, and I have mentoring, and I've been through 6 months of that and really worked on that. So that was one of my biggest challenges. And I guess the biggest reward that came from that was I was nominated as Most Improved Entrepreneur. So I think that kind of gave me some kind of validation, I guess, in that it's not just doing it on a whim. And probably we all feel like we're just going through the motions of it, and you're just stabbing in the dark and taking opportunities that come in. But as a result, that's meant that we can grow our team and we can reach more children. But also the challenging part of that is actually getting the culture right within the team and having people remote working differently to you. Remember, this is your baby, you've done everything, and now you've got to let go. And not everybody works the same way as you. So when I send an email, I don't have any patience. I expect a response within 5 minutes, and an hour later I've still not got a response. And that can be really difficult to let go. So that's been one of the challenges.
Having done this for 9 years, I've had quite a few big challenges thrown at me. Finance is definitely one of them. It's up and down. Sometimes, there's been tough quite a few times. We've had also some really good highs on that one. But the self-doubt thing, similar, is still something I feel is probably one of the biggest challenges. I think it's something that also, I think women are more prone to it statistically. There's lots of research on it, that we just do this thing about questioning ourselves more. I think it doesn't mean men don't do it, but I think it is a thing that more women do. It is definitely something, that affects me still at times. And I feel that is one of the biggest challenges, is stopping me, is limiting beliefs is definitely one of the big things. In terms of successes, there are lots of them. I did actually bring, we've just recently done, partly also inspired by having to do that thing for the Social Enterprise City, but we recently did a sort of summary of some of the successes we've done, and also sort of our ethos and stuff. People can have a look at that later on. That sums up a bit some of our partners, some of the people we work with. So there's some quite amazing things, having done big events for Deloitte and Eon and Amy and that sort of stuff. And also having won Birmingham Green Restaurant Award. But I think because finance was such a big issue, after making a proper profit after, I think it took 5 years, was a really big achievement. And having stayed in profit, and that's I think was a big challenge, and it also is therefore a great success having got there.
Okay, so just before we open up for questions from all of you, so start thinking about what you want to ask. I've got just one last thing to ask the three of you, and that is, what advice would you give to anyone in the room thinking about starting up a social enterprise? In terms of my advice, I would say go for it. Don't waste too much time thinking about what legal structure you're going to choose, because I know people that procrastinate about that for about 18 months or 2 years and don't actually get anywhere with their social enterprise. Pick a legal structure and get on with it, would be my advice.
Get rid of all the toxic people around you, so all those associates and fake friends that you've got, you need to dump them, because they're not going to be helpful. They're actually going to drag you down. So one of the things that I did was I got rid of everybody off Facebook. I had about 15 people left by the end of it. And actually surround yourself with people that are going to be supportive, because people are going to doubt you and say you can't do it and all the rest of it. And you just don't need that whilst you're doing this leap.
I would say write it into existence. Have a notebook, and every idea that you have, you write it down. I've felt that every time I've written something down in my notebook, it's happened because I've believed it's going to happen. Anytime I've stopped writing in my book, that's when things kind of slow right down. The other thing on top of that is not necessarily find yourself a mentor, but find yourself somebody that gets you and what you're doing, so you can always have somebody else to talk to about your business and what you're doing and the ideas that they have, because sometimes you need someone to rein you back in as well, because you can just get carried away with the amount of ideas that you've had. And I've got one person that literally keeps me in check. They say, you know something, Janet, it's just you. Just hold fire on that for a little bit longer. So, yeah.
Said, I think. I think the thing about just getting on with it is a bit like what Heidi says. I think get some advice early on, be really clear what you need, and then just go for it. I agree with that. Yeah. I think in some ways you can't plan for it all anyway. You just have to get on with it and try it.
Thank you. So that's actually reminded me of a couple of other things. One of them is when you're looking for advice, please don't go to friends, family or fools. Make sure you actually ask people that know what they're talking about. So if you're asking somebody that's never run a business, never has any money, never turns up for class on time, etc., about your social enterprise idea, you're probably asking the wrong person. Think about who you're asking and getting advice from. And the other thing, Janet, with all her millions of ideas, I have what I call a one-day list, where I put all of my ideas that I'm going to look at one day on, because I know that actually I can't do all of the millions of things I'd like to do today. They're going to have to wait till tomorrow. I'd just like to say thank you so much for answering all those questions. It's a bit like an interrogation, I'm sure. It's actually going to get a little bit worse now, because we're going to hand over to the audience to ask questions. So anyone got any questions? Yeah, we'll start with you. That's it.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, what do you do when so you've got this great idea and whatever, and some of you have left you had to leave a job at some point, and how do you manage to sustain yourself before your business can start paying you? I think that's a really big thing, because I appreciate that it takes years. I appreciate that it takes maybe years before your business can pay you, and I understand that you've got to be in it for the long haul. So that makes sense, and if you give in 100% to it for the long haul, where are you getting money to pay bills and things from in the meantime?
I guess also don't go with the perception that it's going to take you years to do that. So from year one, I always went with the idea that if I'm doing it, I'm going to get paid for it, so I would never do anything for free, I'd say. But also, we started profit within first 5 months of kind of starting. So kind of have your mindset and kind of do your finances before and incorporate your salary. You might not be getting paid what you used to be paying, but I always said kind of I'm going to build that in straight away to take that out. But I kind of came out with the idea that I'm not going to earn anything for a year, and I'd saved money. At the time, I'd also sold my house, and the house I was going to buy fell through. So I used some of that money, but I didn't use it all because I didn't need to. But have a backup, and it depends how you are with financially. I can't be doing with not having money in the bank and thinking, where's my money going to come from? So I'm a saver, and that's what feeds through the organisation as well, because I can't wake up thinking I can't pay for payroll. It used to cost me £300 a month to run Innovating Minds. It now sometimes costs me £26,000 a month. So I can't be waking up thinking, oh my God, where is that 26 grand coming from? So it depends on you and money, I think, of what where you are and what you're willing to sacrifice.
What I'd say is have a goal, have a deadline for when you plan to be full-time in your social enterprise. If you're just sort of floating around saying, well, one day I'll be committed fully to my social enterprise, it's likely that that one day will never come because you need a deadline. The other thing is you can kind of phase it. What I did when I started my social enterprise, I cut down my days in my full-time job and did 1 day a week in my social enterprise, then 2 days, then I went to 3 days, and then I was like, actually, this is full-time, and I just got rid of my job. But I was lucky in that I could do that with my job. Not every job is that flexible, but that's something that you can do in terms of phasing it in, so you've still got some income while you're growing and scaling your social enterprise. But I did that within about 6 to 8 months. I went from 1 day a week to full-time in my social enterprise. But it's about having the focus and the energy to actually get it up and running, like you were saying, Asha, around, you know, making sure you've got that money coming in, because I'm pretty much like you in that I don't want to sacrifice things in my life. I want to be able to eat, I want to be able to drive my car, I don't want to be worrying that my kids can't do stuff at school and things, you know. The money's got to be there, basically.
The one thing that I've done as well, as much as I've wanted to come out of teaching, I left a permanent job. I went to do supply for a short space of time as well, but that was difficult for me because you don't get paid over the holidays, and I didn't want to sacrifice the pleasures you have at home, and because I've got 2 kids as well, I don't want them to have the sacrifices that I have to have. So I work 3 days a week, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that pays my bills, that gets my shopping, pays for my car, everything, so I know that will cover that, and the business will have to cover itself. I'm not at the point where I can actually take a salary from it. I mean, a salary could be anything. If you wanted to take £50 out, then that's your £50 that you're taking out. The only thing that I can say I will do now, I will cover the cost of my fuel, because I'm mobile and I'm up and down, so that will always come out of my business account. I'm working on now a different strategy in terms of workshops, not just with the community, but ones that are going to pay for my overheads, that I can actually start taking, even if it is just £100, £200 a month from that. But that's something that I know that, right, this is what I need to do next, because it's trialling it out. Who can I get to volunteer, because I can't afford to take on staff at the moment. But it's looking at your circumstances and what kind of business is it that you've actually got. Is it something that you can actually charge a decent amount of money that's going to cover everything? As I said with mine, not everybody wants to sew. So I've had to look at different ways in how I can work that so I can get a substantial amount of revenue back from that.
So I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing because that is probably the question that lots of people ask themselves. And you know, if we did have the full answer to it, and we'd already really rich, and we wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. But so yeah, I've had lots of discussions with other social entrepreneurs about it. I have also always been paid something in my social enterprise, but I've definitely earned a lot less than I did beforehand. I think you need to take yourself and the business seriously enough. You need to decide that you are being paid something, and sort of, you know, create the business plan and the idea around that. So don't start from the provision that you're not going to be paid. Start from a provision that you do want to be paid and you need to be paid, and then try and work it out. Which is not to say there isn't a phase when that is complicated, but don't assume you're not being paid. You know, it is a business, and it's meant to be a business, and the only way social enterprises can do the amazing things they do for this country is by everyone in it overall being paid. You know, that is just a thing, and take yourself seriously enough for that. There is also a thing, you know, if you really are starting and struggling, you can get, for a phase, can sign on and not have to search for jobs and just get paid for that. I mean, you know, for some people that is the start of a business as well. There is an entrepreneurship thing. I've just spoke to someone again about it. So it's not lots of money at all, but it could get you through a few months, you know, when you need to. So it's worth investigating those sort of ideas as well. And then do look into startup funding and stuff like that, you know, and budget with that, because there still is some money out there to help with some of this. And don't undersell what you're doing, you know, just, I mean, you may have to, in the very, very beginning, do things for less money, but eventually, you know, stand up and be proud and charge what you're doing.
Thank you for the talk. It's been really interesting. I've now got visions of trying to find a magical notebook and get to all my friends, but I think the thing that really stands out for me is how do you monetize the business without compromising the social aspect?
One of the I suppose, misconceptions around having a social enterprise is that you shouldn't make money, you shouldn't make profits. Actually, the way I have always viewed social enterprises, the more profit you make, the more social good you can do. So actually, you need to charge properly for your services or your products, you know, run it commercially and use the money you make to do whatever good you want to do in the world. So for me, they're very much matched and paired together. It's what you do with the money, as opposed to a normal business which would take the money out and perhaps go on a round the world trip for 3 years with all the profits. You're going to use any profits you make to impact people's lives and make a bigger difference in their lives or to improve the environment. So for me, there isn't a mismatch between making money and having an impact and making a difference in the world.
I think there's an important thing around what other people think about profit as well. I think it's like a dirty word and you shouldn't be doing that, but actually it's being confident in yourself to say, well, the more profit I make, this is what I can do with it. And you be confident in what you're going to use that profit for, even if it's to invest in internal structures so you can tender for more contracts. That means you're doing more good. So I think it's you having an idea of what you're going to use your profit for, and stand proud about it. You will get some people saying, well, you've got profit, so you're not a social enterprise. And you actually educate them, I'm not a charity, and actually without this profit, this work wouldn't be taking place.
The other thing as well, it's important that you're not heavily relying on funding as well. So if you can be financially sustainable by being able to income source yourself, then it means that you don't have to always apply for funding, and it's that disappointment. What if you don't get that funding? What am I going to do next? I purposely haven't applied for funding because I wanted to see how it works first, to see what I can do, what I need to be able to earn to be able to cover all my overheads as an absolute minimum. Once I've done that, then I can look at, right, this is the project that I need to be running, this is how much money I need to be able to get the resources. So at the moment, even just being able to cover my overheads means I can offer a young person a free space to be able to work on their craft, which means that I can then put that in a bid for funding to say, right, I've worked with so many people, the model's worked, I need some more money to be able to even buy them resources because I've offered them a free platform.
Yeah, I also don't think the social mission needs to be in any way in the way of profit. I mean, I think for me the really important thing is wording with social enterprise. I always say we're for more than profit rather than, you know, not for profit. I hate that term because it's just not true and it's really unhelpful. So, you know, and triple bottom line is another term that I really like, that, you know, that a lot of us work for both sort of positive social impact as well as a positive sort of environmental impact, and as well as profit, and it's those sort of three things. And they don't have to be, you know, competing with each other, I don't think. I think the important thing with that is you have to decide what your social mission is and stick with it. I think in the long run it is something that helps sell. I think it can't be the only reason why people buy from you, but it's certainly an added bonus they're getting, and in the long run it should be a good thing. I know what's happening. We're not that loud, are we? So yeah, it doesn't have to be. I mean, sometimes, so in our case, because we're still fairly small, we don't get paid for some of the support we give to, you know, some bigger companies get similar sort of people onto their team that we do, and they get paid per person they're having on their team. We're just not big enough to qualify this. So all of this comes just from our own, that's just what we do. And we don't get paid for it. That's sometimes, it would be helpful if we did. And it would obviously help us grow quicker. We also didn't go for many grants because we're a business. I see ourselves as a business. It also means we don't have to do things that other people want us to do, but we can get on with what we're doing. So yeah, it doesn't have to be. And in fact, I think it's really important to see yourself as a business with a social mission rather than a social mission with a business, because you're not going to have anything anymore for much longer if you don't see it that way around.
My question probably isn't such a nuanced answer. It's more that you mentioned there was some awards events that were really worth going to. I think I was out on that list for a while, but are there any others that you'd recommend?
Somebody advised me to look on Eventbrite and then take a look at different events that you can attend and go and see who's there. One of the things not to do is that you keep going to the same places and meeting the same people all of the time, because actually then you're just hanging around with your mates type thing and it's not very business-like productive. So mix it up. And don't go with the aim of trying to sell. If you go with the aim of trying to sell, you're going to come away really disappointed. Actually go away with making relationships with people, of kind of getting to know people, because people buy from people, and that's how recommendations will take place. If you go with a hard sell, people are not interested straight away. I don't know anywhere else. I think Eventbrite is the best place to start.
Yeah, there is actually a list of all the awards that are run in the country. I can't actually think where it is. I will locate it. But you basically look under your sector or whatever area you want, and then I would start with those in terms of identifying which awards to go for. Okay, so we're just going to switch across to this side of the room.
Hi. I had a question concerning your initial startup. Looking back now, where you are now, looking back, what was one thing, what advice you give yourself in your initial startup? What things you would change?
For me, I probably would have thought bigger than what I did. I set out with quite small goals and plans, and actually I should have planned for world domination back then. And realistically it was always to be quite small scale and just work in Birmingham, and actually I should have thought national and international back then, as opposed to thinking about it now that I've got 2 children in tow and trying to carry them around the world with me, like I did in July. I took them for a month to Thailand. So I had a 6-month-old baby and a 4-year-old spending a month with me while I was working in Thailand. I should have done that way before they were born.
I think for me, somebody said to me pretty early on, if your goals and your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. So that kind of be quite frightened, kind of anxious about those goals. But one of the things was I commuted from Birmingham to London 3 times a week to deliver our first contract, because I needed to get that right, because that was our kind of case study, I guess. And that took a lot out of me in terms of physically, emotionally. You're living out of a suitcase. I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going to London, coming back at 8, 9 o'clock at night and doing the same again, that type of thing. But actually, keep that goal in focus. So I knew it was a means to an end, in that it was going to get us to other places, which it did do. So kind of keep remembering why. But after a year, I did say to myself, I'm going to hand this contract back if I can't find somebody in London in terms of staff-wise to deliver it. So I was willing to not continue to compromise my own health. So I think that's really important to think about at startup, is that you don't look after yourself very well, and you need to keep that in mind. If you burn out, you're no good, because you're not doing anything.
The one thing that I would have told myself back then is don't sell your soul to the devil. Because it's that thing about always saying yes to people all the time. And I'd find that somebody would ask, oh, can you do this? Yes, I can. And then I'd find I'd have so much work to do, I couldn't manage it all. So just because you need money doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. And if I was to start all over again, that's one thing that I would do, is know your limits. And if it is just you, what can you manage? Don't do more than your body can allow you. There was sometimes I was sewing 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not a 20-something-year-old anymore. I can't manage it. I actually fell asleep at a sewing machine once. I've never done that in the whole 30 years that I've been sewing. And I've got industrial machines as well. And I literally, and I was like, wow. And my foot was actually on the pedal at the same time. I don't know how I didn't hurt myself, but it's important that you do say no. And don't feel a way about saying no. You'll have, what Asha was saying about, don't get advice from family members. Family members are the worst. They really are. They'll say that they will help you, and when it comes down to it, you need their help there and then. They're too busy, they can't do it. And it's about managing yourself better. If I could manage myself a lot better than I did in the early days, I probably wouldn't be as worn out as I am now, because I am doing everything. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you will be doing everything anyway. But it is that thing, learn to say no, and don't feel guilty for saying no either, because you are one person, and if somebody takes offence at it, don't lose sleep over it, seriously.
Probably something I'm still not that good at, but I still would tell myself, is to be, when going in a partnership with a bigger organisation, which isn't that unusual for social entrepreneurs, to have a clear contract and to insist on what you need out of it as well, and have like a get-off clause.
Hi, thank you for the talk. What are sort of the strategic plans that you have to expand your company and to remain relevant as you are, or even more relevant in the future?
I've always had the same plan. My long-term goal was to have a creative hub. That it's a building, probably have 4 floors, and every floor has something different. So you could have a photography studio on the ground floor, fashion and textiles on the next one, a multimedia studio, and something else on the top floor. And it was more so that I still want to support the non-academics as well, those that are working full-time, that want somewhere that they can go to be able to work on setting up their own businesses as well. I feel like at the moment I feel like I'm small fry in a big world of all these different organisations that are supporting young people. But it's important that I feel that in my growth as well, that I can still make products, that people can help make the products to resell, that there's a platform for you to go and use, that I can talent match as well. So you've got somebody within your field as a mentor, not necessarily somebody that's physically going to be there, but somebody that you can have a phone call with just to ask for advice, and that there is somebody there that can give you business advice as and when you need it as well. So that is my main goal, to have something like that. So when I decide that I'm going to take a step back from it, that somebody else can run it as well. So there might be a young person there that's like, you know something, I actually want to be able to run this floor. Then I want to be able to do everything on the fashion and textile side. I want somebody that's quite, with the photography side, somebody that's got some experience and they can give advice. You can give advice to each other as well. So that for me is in 2, 3, 4 years maybe. That's what I'm aiming for.
One of our plans is to be a national organisation with then expanding into international work, which we've started to do, but for at least for psychologists to be in every school, if not lobbying for government changes and policy. And then our free programme for children affected by domestic abuse has become a national programme as well, so we've just started to copyright that programme so we can change that into Train the Trainer. The long-term vision is that, which we're setting up now, is that everything runs without me, so it starts to run on its own. So think about your exit, if you do want to exit. Innovating Minds needs to be at a point where actually it goes past me and I'm not the right person to take it to the next level that it needs to go to. So that's the long-term vision, is that actually one of the things that I've been careful is not getting too emotionally attached to it, in that it's mine, because what you get is founder syndrome, and actually you start to hinder your own social enterprise. So it's getting it to a point where it runs without me. So everybody, staff internally, kind of have that vision and take it to the place that it needs to go. And then the next CEO will come on board and take it even further. So that's the next 5-year plan for us.
My next step is I'm sort of already in contact with a social investment fund in Birmingham, and the idea is to get sort of quite large loan to get our own premises for once. We've always so far been in a building with a partner, and I really feel that we're now a grown-up organisation and need our own building. So that's the next step. We hopefully get this grant, turn a space into something that's really multifunctional for us. So there has a sort of a decent sized kitchen, but also a big space. There can be all sorts of things. It can be a breakout room for, I don't know, if we have big events where some of the stuff can be done outside the kitchen, but also a space for training, both on the healthy eating side as well as maybe some corporate away day stuff. Maybe even to hire out the kitchen occasionally to people who, I don't know, make chutneys or whatever they do. And then have more pop-ups. And that all came out of having a day with 14 people from PricewaterhouseCoopers who volunteered their time and worked on a new strategy. And sort of we looked at all the income strands we've got so far, and one of the things that came out of it is that our sort of the thing we can influence the most, how to increase our income and how to increase, scope, is to have more of our pop-ups, and we can put them on. We decide when they are. So that's one of the things that is the sort of next step. And I am also that is also part of the process of managing myself out more. I mean, I'm already not having to do most of the cooking anymore, but I still have lots of other hats on, and so the next step is to hand more hats to more people. So that's the next step.
Yeah, just for me, in terms of my vision, is to break capitalism in the entire world. So that, as I mentioned earlier, that all businesses are social enterprises. So not too big a vision, but I'm working on that by 2020, and then we'll see what the next big vision after that is. But running alongside that, I'm also working to get 100,000 children around the world out of poverty through helping their families to set up social enterprises. So there's a number of things that I'm working on. So I'd just like to say, if people do have any other questions, please do come and speak to us afterwards. We're going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for sitting still and being patient for so long. I hope you found it useful. Please do connect with any of us and talk to us, ask us questions. I hope you're sticking around for a little while. You're not going to run off straight away. But thank you so much for all attending this evening.